I'm going to go ahead and start by saying thank you. This is one of these special opportunities that I'll probably never have again in my life. So it's one of those things that brings you to tears. I'll go ahead and address the awkward question. Yes, I'm not wearing shoes. I come from a background where wearing high heels is very rare. I often ask myself, I think back to like the sounds of my mother as a single working mother of three. The sounds of a working class mother wearing foundry shoes. Listening to her wake up at 4, 5, 6 a.m. in the morning, and knowing now after a decade when she got her degree, now I hear the sounds of high heels, but unfortunately it's still not something I have in my head yet. I grew up barefoot, so I'll speak to you humbly barefoot. So my name is Brooke. I'm a first-generation student. This is unfortunately kind of a vague topic and a vague definition that we don't really know of yet. Some people think it's if you have both parents who didn't go to college, but then questions are, of course, well, what if I have a parent who passed away? What if I have a single-parent home and my mother went to a community college? There are all of these caveats that we have questions to. And here at UW-Madison, it's not something that we much talk about. I want to say that first-generation students are something as about 2006 and 2009, UW-Madison started to collect data, so very recently, on students who consider themselves first-generation. Now this is just of students who self-identify. And again, without a clear definition, we don't really know how many of us exist. But at UW-Madison, I can tell you that it's a very small amount. So I find myself very lonely, very isolated most of the time, because I can't seem to find many of my peers on campus. We have like 45,000 people. All these other identities. Yes, I'm a disabled student for factors non-visible. Unfortunately, that's something that being a woman in the academy, you unfortunately, with a lot of paternal tones, you get men who say, oh, these are just women problems. You're just fine. You just have woman problems. I have no idea what that even means. But it's something that you often hear. And yes, I'm these different things. I'm a researcher, and I've gone to these different places, and I still don't even remember in my brain that I've done them because it's so shocking. So I want to bring you back to a really humble moment for me. And pardon me, I may cry. This is something I'm still going through, so it's still a current trauma that I haven't resolved yet. So May 14th of 2014, I was running. Okay, believe me, I was running across the UW-Madison campus to Ingram Hall. My car had just died 2 days prior. My alternator was dead. My battery was dead. But I had the most important meeting of my life. And by sharing this with you, I will also be admitting that, yes, I was kicked out of school for a year. It's certainly not something classically that I'm proud of. But I was running to this meeting, what we call a readmission meeting, with an academic dean. And I was wearing shorts with holes in them and a sweater with holes in them, and I had one bra held together by clothespins, and I was running barefoot with a pair of tennis shoes that had been eaten by mice, and it was all I had. But I was running for my life because I knew that I wouldn't have one if I didn't make it. So, of course, I was running late, okay? I'm not the fastest person in the world these days, no laughs. So running on my way, I'm seeing the clock, I'm realizing that I'm now 10 minutes late, okay? 10 minutes late, it's the most important meeting of my life, right? Always late, freaking out, crying at the same time, huffing and puffing. And I see 3 construction men in a truck. And I beg them really fast, can I please hitch a ride? I really need to get to this meeting, it's so important, it'll change my life or ruin it if I don't make it. So I hitched a ride to the most important meeting of my life. What's ironic is these construction workers had also attended UW-Madison. They were alumni. And I come from a family of day laborers, so this was a very surreal moment for me, running to this moment of higher ed to really escape a cycle of meager survival. So I made it to my meeting, 23 minutes late to a 30-minute meeting. I've never had a more unprofessional moment in my life, and never a more humble moment in my life. And I walked in the door of this beautiful office, and there was a young man sitting right to the side of me, and knowing he's about to have this crazy meeting himself, and he's just thinking and talking to himself and being totally scared, and I realize I'm late, and the dean opens his office door, and he says, Brooke, you have 5 minutes, and you have 5 minutes only. You can go ahead and try and make your case, but I want you to know you only have 5 minutes, and you're lucky I'm letting you in. So I ran in there. I had just gone to the Goodwill 2 days earlier, bought this brand new, Goodwill brand new, portfolio, stacked with documentation. It's something at UW-Madison we require. When you're kicked out, they want to know what you're doing. Tell me everything that you are doing. Are you seeking help? Are you active? Are you enrolling in classes elsewhere? Tell me everything. So I'm a stickler for documentation, and I brought everything. My documentation's different. My documentation consisted mostly of verification forms of every place that I have slept because I'm homeless. I first became homeless in fall of 2010. I transferred to UW-Madison in 2012, UW-La Crosse, and I took my homelessness from La Crosse to Milwaukee, to Waukesha, to Madison. I feel like I've been homeless everywhere, which is actually not a bad thing. I've seen a lot of places. But here I am in this meeting, and I'm throwing out pieces of paper saying, honest to God, I'm ready to be back. I promise I'm good enough. I can make it here. And I was readmitted. After 5 minutes, I was readmitted. And I can't even express to you how special a moment was for me, running out of Ingram Hall, passing out on the concrete, and screaming because I knew that I would have a chance at making something of myself. Because if I hadn't made it there, I know I wouldn't survive another year homeless outside of college. It's bad enough in college. It's worse when you're out of it. So that was the moment that I knew I could come back and talk to you. I never thought that I would be here, but I certainly knew that I could talk to someone. So, this is 2014, summer of 2014, I've just been readmitted. Okay, this is the first step. There are 1,000 other things that happen in this equation for me in this moment. I am still homeless, right? So I leave Madison, I'm still homeless, going back to where I'm schlepping. And I realize I have absolutely nowhere to stay in fall. I don't have financial aid. So here I am, I've been kicked out, I'm now readmitted, and I'm so excited to be back to school, but I'm still going to be in the same situation I've been in. So let me give you some context. All right. So fall of 2010 is when I started college. I had absolutely no idea what college entailed or what the real costs of college were. I had no idea. I'd never had loan counseling. No, I'm not a lazy person. I worked 3 to 4 jobs a semester of college as soon as I started. Did student government. I tried my best to be involved. I was on the dean's list, but I burnt out after about a semester and became incredibly ill. So it turns out your body can't handle that much. Shocking. And so that was really the beginning of a spiral for me. What's so weird to talk about is, yes, crisp. That sounds great right now. What's so weird for me to talk about is I'm here trying to talk to you today about a circumstance that is still so current for me, but it's almost like I'm pretending to be a more professional version of myself, and I'm really nothing like this in my personal life. It's okay, change is good. So, we'll fast forward. Every semester, college was different. I took out gigantic student loans. I had no idea how much I was taking out. If you want me to be honest with you, I have about $70,000 of student loan debt, and I'm a philosophy major. Yes, you can laugh about that to yourselves. Please don't laugh about it now, because it's very sad. But every semester that went by, I cared less and less about graduating. I cared more and more about finding somewhere to sleep, more and more about being warm, about having a blanket. Is someone going to call me? Does my family know what's happening to me? Do they care? I'll be honest, I come from a family of alcoholics and substance abusers. I come from a kind of home, perhaps you did too. I learned at a young age that having basic needs of any kind, right, this is shameful. And expressing them signified some kind of weakness. So I didn't tell anybody really anything. I was a high achiever most of my life. I was gifted and talented from a young age. I wonder if that person regrets that decision now. Who knows? But I remember when I was in 5th grade, right? This is how I should have known, right? I always thought to myself, I'm clever. I should have known at that age that this would be something that would happen to me, but I didn't know. I walked into class one day, 5th grade class, favorite science teacher ever. I won't say his name. Favorite time I've ever loved science. I've never loved science enough as much as I did in that class. And he said to me, remind you, this is time of Harry Potter, okay? I am maybe 10 or 11 years old. Everything that starts with an SN reminds me of Snape. Everything that starts with an SL reminds me of Slytherin. It's usually bad. And I stood in the doorway, and he said to me, "Brooke, you're looking quite slovenly today." Absolutely no idea what that meant. He's like, "You don't know what that means? Why don't you go to the back of the classroom, open the dictionary, look up the definition, and tell the class what it means." And when you're that young, you remember synonyms. And I realized that my teacher had just called me gross, dirty, messy, unkempt, and disheveled. Right? My class had just heard my teacher call me these things. And I really never lived that down. And I realized at that point that being poor and appearing poor, being yourself, wasn't okay in education. So, I'm older, right? I've somehow made it to college. I really have no idea. I never really looked forward to it. I think I just did it because everyone did it, and my mom wanted something to tell people that I was doing. Made us sound better as a family. So I started college. I transferred to UW-Madison in 2012 because UW-La Crosse was small, and I was born in Milwaukee. It's clearly nothing like I was used to. I transferred here. I'll tell you that it's a very lonely existence because you have no coat, right? You have no boots. These are material hardships. You have few clothes. Anyone who knows me then, I wore the same sweatshirt every day. I tried to hide it. Laundry's expensive. So this is actually why you can't check out magazines anymore at the library. I went to the library, I would check out magazines, I'd rip out the perfume flaps, and I'd put them all over my clothes so that no one would know I couldn't afford to do laundry. I tried very hard to hide it because it makes other people uncomfortable, right? Never mind the fact that being a homeless woman in your early 20s, right? So I was 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, I just turned 24. Spent 44,000 hours and counting of my life that I've been here. Of those 44,000 hours, I don't think I ever saw a moment or thought of a moment where I would see the light or be anything other than street rat. Yes, that's an allusion to Aladdin. You can smile, that's a great movie. But when I got to UW-Madison, I hid, right? It's 2012, 2013 passed, and I let myself hide. I didn't tell anyone what was going on with me. And I failed out of school. I didn't go to class. I was sleeping outside, sleeping in my car, sleeping in benches, sleeping with people I didn't know, sleeping with people I did know, sleeping at houses of people I did know. But that's if you're lucky. And something I'm going to say that's very uncomfortable for people to talk about, I'll say that I learned in that experience, you become grateful for a few things. Agendas, right? When someone says something right, and how do I say this? In so few words, that's not awful. I became grateful for men who propositioned me for sex in exchange for shelter, because I knew that that was the safest interaction that I could have where I could say no. And you know what? I don't blame anyone who ever said yes. It's really not a moment where you can pretend to be high and mighty. I'll tell you that for the first thing. But what people don't understand is, and God bless people, right? Wouldn't be here without them. We all have different kinds of agendas. We have agendas we're not even consciously aware of, agendas that come out when some people are inebriated. You consistently have to be very afraid. Me, myself, I didn't even know how to sleep anymore. You have to become necessarily terrified of sleeping, because that is when someone hurts you, right? That is when someone takes your belongings, right? Those are moments of fear. The first time that I was ever molested while homeless was in the summer of 2011 by a woman, and I didn't expect it. And this is another reason why, if you have any prejudices or discrimination, even in the back of your mind, you better lose them now, because they're not real. And if you go out into the world being homeless thinking that there's some sort of safe demographic, someone from a church, you're bound to get hurt, because you don't judge people that way, right? You cannot judge people that way. And so I learned early on that both women and men, Christian women, gray hair business owner, was a wonderful lady by day, right? Sold prescription drugs to young women in the evening. People are complex. And so what did I do? I became the blandest version of myself, right? I lost my identity necessarily, because if I offended anyone at any given moment, I could lose my life, I could lose my shelter, I could lose whatever sexual autonomy I had left, right? Lose my computer. God forbid, I bought it for myself in high school. I've worked since pretty much middle school, right? Saved up for that for a long time. That ended up happening. That was worst case scenario for me. Something people don't know is winters are very cold in Wisconsin. And when I was staying wherever I was staying without heat, what I would do is turn on my computer, open up a YouTube video, play a video of a fireplace, a crackling fireplace, and that's how I'd fall asleep. Right? And I'm so sorry because my mother is here today, and I feel really bad saying this in front of her, but no one really called me, right, when I was homeless. Nobody really wants to mess around with you when you're homeless. No one's interested. Kind of a burden. You stress people out. You're not fun. You don't have money, right? Nobody really called me. And there were these moments I thought to myself, I could die today, and no one would know where I am. No one would probably care. I think I've just become lost to the system. So, coming to college, right, going to classes, as you can imagine, it was really the last thing on my priority list, last thing I was interested in doing. But after I was readmitted in 2014, after years and years and years of this, I got angry. I got angry, and like a middle schooler says to their mother when they tell them to clean their room, and they're like, no. That was pretty much my reaction, right? The state of Wisconsin was telling me that I wasn't going to be able to receive food share. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm a McNair scholar. McNair scholars are some of the lowest income and underrepresented minorities in their fields. They also serve individuals who are disabled. And the goal is to make PhDs, right, these students, change their stars, so to speak. And I said, you know what, I'm a McNair scholar, right? We're told that this is our job. We work 20 to 40 hours a week doing research. You're telling me you want me to work another 20 hours a week on top of my 16, 17, 18 academic credit course load? I want you to understand what that is going to mean for me, and that makes no rational sense. I'm sorry, it just makes no sense in the world. The McNair program is a federal TRIO-funded program, right? It's meant to help socioeconomically disadvantaged people change their lives. Long story short, took about 6 people in, 6 different women who wanted to fight with me. Fine, used to that. But the 6th woman, her name was Marissa, wonderful woman. She listened to me and she said, you know what, we're going to make your case number a precedent. Any McNair scholar in the state of Wisconsin will automatically qualify for food share. I'm really sorry. Sorry to burden you further, ma'am. And that was a winning moment for me, because it was another moment where I was like, I have 20 more hours where I can sleep, 20 more hours where I can pretend to be a normal college student and do things that are fun, right? But this was like the smallest moment, the earliest moment that I realized I think I was an activist. Super weird, because I grew up thinking activists were people who hug trees, and that was really all I thought. But I realized at the moment, simply by saying no, right? If I am nothing before you but merely the accumulation of no's that I've said in my life, then I am fine with that. My mother will tell you that I've said no my whole life. I was a problem child. But in this way, it's worked for me. And I took that anger, and I took those no's back to the UW, right? We all know, if you're from the UW community, sifting and winnowing, right? I decided to turn sifting and winnowing in on itself, perhaps became a public enemy in the process, and decided to look at UW-Madison as an institution, right? How are students like me faring? And foremost, are there students like me homeless? How on earth is this possible, right? We're an R1 world-class research institution. How the heck can we have students who don't have homes? Is that not our duty? And I'll tell you why it is our duty, right? Because it's a federal mandate that full-time students, perhaps students broadly speaking, cannot qualify for subsidized housing through the state, right? And if your family is in subsidized housing and you become a college student, you will lose it for your family. Okay, so this is what happens, right? You have students, right, from my socioeconomic class who can't afford to live in university housing. They can't also qualify for subsidized housing, so they have nowhere to go. UW didn't provide any sort of resources like this. And what's pretty typical for institutions when you have students who can't afford basic needs is they say, are you struggling in classes? What's wrong with you? You can't afford food, you can't afford somewhere to live. You know what that means? There must be something wrong with you, right? And that's what they tell you, is that there must be something wrong with you, right? They blame your poverty on you. Never mind the fact that there are plenty of students here who grew up in poverty, right? There is a myth out there that I want to bust for you today, that people think when you enter college, you all of a sudden become middle class, become something else. Nope. Sorry, everyone, but you grow up in poverty, you're still poor. You've got a long way to go. right? I'm 70,000 in student debt, got a long way to go. I'll be in debt till the day I die, right? But through this process, right, I know, I'll try to practice some brevity. I'm a humanities major, I suck at it. I'll say that the UW was afraid of me when I started talking about these things because they thought, oh no, we've got more vulnerability, we got more students, we got more things to account for, we've just lost tenure, we've just lost shared governance, we're extremely stressed out, what are we gonna do? We're gonna deny that students like these exist. We're gonna say in publications, it's UW-Madison, we have no such thing as homeless students. And if we do, there's such a small number, not our problem, it's negligible. Well, in a meeting that I had with the chancellor last school year, I said to her, now I know I'm just a philosophy major, I don't know much, but I'm pretty sure, right, that we're a Research One institution. When we say that something doesn't exist, when we make that ontological commitment to the world, to the media, to the public who trust what we say, when we say something doesn't exist, right, we better have some data to tell us that that is the case. And UW had admitted, right, they've never collected data on students who are homeless, never students coming from foster care. Mind you, only 3% of students coming from foster care ever get a college degree, right? If you have one of those in your institution, praise them, because they're facing real odds, right? This was the start of a long, long process of working with UW, sifting with UW, being hated by the UW. Yes, yeah, I know, I'm trying. And I will say one of the scariest moments for me was when the leadership at the institution, they back-channeled this policy through email, right? And they said, if a student appears homeless, dear faculty, dear instructional staff, if a student appears homeless, report them. By them being reported, we will have grounds to investigate their personal lives, right? We're gonna find something they're doing wrong. There must be something defective or deficient about their agency. There must be something wrong with them. And of course, the third thing that would be the crux is they must be disabled. Right? This is an appropriation that's not true, but happens often with people who are homeless, right? Luckily, that policy was struck in because, right, you can't discriminate against someone from being disabled. But this was a moment where I realized that my university, right, I couldn't even tell my peers, go ahead and identify yourself, go ask for help from the university, because if you do, you're putting a target on your back. Not only can they investigate into your personal life, but if they'd like to, it could be grounds for dismissal. Right? So something I don't think people understood is that now if you come out as being poor, if you make yourself an eyesore, not only look it, but make it clear, you can be kicked out of this institution. I don't know about you, but I certainly didn't sign up to appear a certain way, present or seem a certain way. I didn't know that it was criminal, to be poor. Unfortunately, it's expensive and criminal to be poor in this country. But that was when I became infuriated with my UW, right? But I love her, and I'm here because I know that she can do better. So now I work with the UW today to make these changes. I'm still waiting for the day that UW makes a public statement in support of socioeconomic diversity as a divisive force that really exists in students' lives today. And I'll leave you with a couple things. Lord knows I missed out a lot. In 2011, we admitted about 19% of our freshman class were first-generation students. In 2014, about 16.8%, 16.3% were first-generation students. And if you look into the data, less and less and less of them are actually from the state. So, when the university says things like, look at our college completion rates, they're so much better, right? They're better because they're admitting less of us, right? Clearly, we are not retaining. Students like me are not retaining. We are not graduating. We are graduating with debt we can never repay. We're defaulting on it, which is horrible for the community, right? We're failing. And instead of addressing the problem, we'll just get rid of them, or we'll admit less, right? I'm here today to throw this into your public consciousness that we can demand more from UW. I'm learning that I can demand things as a poor person in the institution. If I don't have access to basic rights and liberties and shelter and food, perhaps I can demand more. It's something that's novel for a poor kid like me. But I wanted to throw it out there for you so that you're aware that yes, this is a force that exists in our university. I understand UW has an upper class sheen to it, the way we keep our yard. But there's certainly nothing to be ashamed of by having poor students, right? We are a state institution, and we serve the state. Thank you.